voters of the Northwoods program. Today, a step into public service. I'm Pam Taylor, and I'm Vice President of our local chapter in the Northwoods. We cover 6 counties, and we're excited to have this program today. We have representatives from local, county, and a statewide run for office. They're going to share with us an overview of their run, what motivated them to get going and get involved in this, what they've learned, what inspired them, lessons learned, all of these kinds of things. The League of Women Voters is committed to making our democracy work and have open dialogue and to make sure the citizenry is informed of what the local, state, and national issues are. And we're thrilled to have these 3 speakers with us today. We have Ashley Roach, who's from Arbor, Vitae Town Board Supervisor, and she's been there almost 5 years now. We have Pat Voermans from the Lincoln County Board Supervisor, and we have Chris Meier, who ran for state representative. And we're excited to hear what they have to say. Ashley, would you like to start?
Okay, can everyone hear me? I'm unmuted, okay. Good? Okay, I got some nods. Yeah, like Pam said, I am Ashley Roach. I've been on the Arbor Vitae Board of Supervisors as a supervisor for about 5 years now. As for my decision to go into the political realm, I strongly believe that a good politician isn't a straight up politician. I get my fingers into every little thing I can get into, which gives me a great insight for making decisions for my township. I'm on the fire department, rescue squad. I'm a business owner. I went to school here, went to Lakeland High School, and being a female in the demographic of age below 50, 60, I am one of the few on my board that can represent somebody in my age group. I'm 35 years old. So I feel like the people that I talk to might have different concerns than what was currently sitting on my board. I did not run contested, so I had a very easy campaign. But that's not a reason to not run. I feel like if I was contested, that wouldn't have changed my reason to run at all. I still am very strong in my convictions that I represent this unrepresented group. So I'm very proud of that. I did run contested for the first time last year. I did not really campaign much. I felt that if people were voting for me, I wanted them to know what I'm about, know how I feel about things instead of just seeing my name on a sign. So I concentrated more on getting information out to local newspapers, television stations on my bio and actual details instead of just saying, Ashley Roach, I've heard that name before, I'm going to check that box on my ballot. I wanted the people voting for me to know what they were voting for and be smart voters. So that was my big push to get that information out. When it came to actually starting the campaigns for like someone rerunning like I would be, or someone starting new, you do have to start with the correct forms. I know a lot of people can go right to their clerk and get them. That's the most convenient way. It's kind of nice to get it from the clerk because then you can ask those questions. Could you be missing anything? What dates do they have to be put in by? All of those are very important to getting on the ballot. You can collect your forms now from your town clerk or county clerk, but you cannot distribute and collect signatures until after December 1st. That is in the fine print of the form, but if you didn't see that on the bottom, if you were to print it off the website, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. So having a person to actually talk to and have those answers is a great thing. My clerk was Mary Ruland at the time, and she's a wealth of information. She kind of guided me through the entire process. So count on your clerks. They're great people. You can get those forms online. I just pulled up the website right before we started here. It's elections.wi.gov. And there's a section on forms. So that declaration of candidacy form, you can print it out in a PDF and just fill it out with a pen, turn it in that way, or you can also do like a fillable form and type your information right in. Kind of makes it look a little bit more professional and clean. And then the other form you'll need, which I don't see on that website, I'll have to find out exactly where to get it from if you're not getting it from your clerk, but it's your signature forms. That's probably the most important part of all of this. You need a certain quantity of signatures depending on what you're running for, and you can collect them all yourself. I did that because I wasn't required to get as many. I want to say 25 for the town supervisor position. But if you are sending out your sheets for other people to collect for you, which is an awesome thing to do because then you're just spreading the word even more. You can't have multiple people collecting on the same sheet. Say you give one to Joe Bob down the street and he's going to take it to his line of work. That sheet is only Joe Bob's signatures he collected and he has to give it back to you. Each form is signed and verified by the person collecting the signatures and yourself. So yeah, keep a good eye on those. You can't let them just like sit on the tack board at your local cafe and have signatures collected. You have to stand behind it with your voice and your life. I guess the other questions I kind of want to address for anyone that was a new candidate or looking to get into it is it's an important job. It's something that you need to have a lot of like information about. But if you don't have the political background, that's fine. You're representative of all kinds of people, political and not political. So being a business owner myself, I was able to like make decisions based on how I live my life every day, which is exactly what the job should be. So you learn as you go. I've learned a lot from my other supervisors, whether it be where to stick up for myself or where to voice my opinion more. Broadband was brought up before we started the whole conversation here today. With my board being 60-year-old plus men, I had to explain to them what broadband was. So that was something that I was able to grab by the horns and do as much as I can with. So being of the demographic I am, if there's things that fit in my niche a little better, I am glad to try things like that and to try to better my township, because I don't know if it would have been taken care of with the other members. Not that they aren't capable, they just don't know what it is. And I did. So I was able to fill that niche. I guess what was kind of other questions you wanted me to address, Pam? I know that we talked briefly before.
Yes, about your motivation also, what really motivates you to get involved in local politics and to go ahead and run. I forgot to, which I apologize in advance to everyone, but ask your questions via the chat. We do have somebody who's monitoring the chat and will ask the questions as they come up. If you want to ask them at the end or at any other time, you can raise your little blue hand and we have someone that'll be monitoring that too. But you know, really some of your lessons learned through the whole running process.
Yeah, well, first with my motivation. I briefly kind of brought up, but it's being able to be that representative for my demographic. Our township does have a lot of retired people, and they are, I want to say 60% of my percentage is people in the retirement bracket. But that still leaves, yes, it is majority, but that leaves 40% of people unrepresented. That's where I came in. I wanted to make sure that school age kids and their parents, young families moving to the area, or even just visiting the area, that's a huge part of our economy. I'm near the Minocqua area. Tourism is our thing. This is what we do. So the people coming up to be in our areas are the hikers, the bikers, the activity people, and that's every age group. So I wanted to make sure that those people have a voice as well. When I do have a decision that I need to put more thought in, more research in, like I do research by like asking people around how they think, along with going like just online, other websites of townships, what they've done, how it affected people. Social media is a great thing these days because people are voicing their opinion, no holds bar. That's good and bad. Sometimes people get a little crazy with things and go overboard and say troll different topics But those voices are coming from some sort of truth. They're able to hide behind the shield of a computer monitor, and they may be a little bit more blunt than they may be in the public realm. So it's interesting to learn those opinions from every avenue, including Facebook, Instagram. I haven't done the TikTok thing yet, but I hear it's kind of big. Maybe I'll look into that. But it's a great place to be in my bracket, doing the things that I do. I am on the fire department and the rescue squad, so I come from a world of emergencies. People generally don't like seeing me in my part-time jobs. In addition to, I'm also one of the county deputy coroners, so it's not really something that is a pleasant, happy job. No one wants me to walk in their door at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I've seen people at their worst, at their struggles, and that helps me think of things that are needed in the community. There is one area of my community that has horrible internet service. I could go back to broadband because that's the thing that's like on the top of my mind. They were having a hard time getting through on their cell phone that was connected to their Wi-Fi to call 911. So an instance like that is where I get to experience how the system failed and what I can do to fix it. So I get to take note of all of these things I see in my everyday life that I can help my town with. I guess from things I've learned, going from year 1 to year 5 now, I feel like I've gotten a little bit more bold with being able to speak up at meetings. I see Lon in there. She's seen me from the beginning. She's always been at our meetings. I just love that. And I've always been kind of a quiet person, but that's more my demeanor. I listen a lot. That's how I learn. So the first few years, I didn't speak up a whole lot. Obviously, I still voted on things. I still did what I am required to do. But now in year 5, I can be like, hey, hold up here. I don't feel that way. And I'm going to tell you why. And that has something that I probably could have done much earlier, but it's hard to speak to a group of people that I say maybe superior. I guess not superior is not the right word, but seniority over you. And it feels that way. So don't be afraid to kind of speak up, ask the questions that you need to ask, because as soon as I got that voice where I could ask those questions, I could walk into the office and be like, hey, Frank, what did you mean by that the other day? Then I can take that knowledge and run with it. And I would recommend anyone doing that from the beginning. And I'm sad I didn't do that on day 1. It probably wouldn't have changed a whole lot in the scheme of things because I have the most amazing township that has been an open book for me for everything. But I want to make sure everyone knows that those avenues are available. You can ask questions. It doesn't sound dumb. They encourage it. So ask your questions, run away with it. Also why I want to be here today. Like, I'm an open book as well. I'm maybe only 5 years experience, but the experience is there and I can help with it.
Great.
Had any questions come in or?
There has. It says, what have your challenges been within your position? Do you believe you have specific challenges as a female? Do you believe that retirees in the area have a different motivation or goal than the younger constituents, namely keeping taxes low? If so, how do you handle that conflict between the two?
Well, I haven't had a lot of that conflict. Like I said, my township is amazing and I'm very lucky. But when it comes to any conflict, like something as simple as we had one town road that they were thinking of opening up to larger weight vehicles. I see things from every side of it. The school buses on this road are heavy. The loggers on this road are heavy, and those roads are expensive to replace. But by moving that route, would that change how the school operates? Would it change the safety of the school buses going out into the highway instead of taking a back road? Would the loggers not want to be purchasing land from the DNR in our town to access these logging plots? So regardless of my age, who is affecting, I listen to every opinion as much as I possibly can. I think that the being young does help with that, because I haven't had much of, I'm 35. I'm not like a child, but I haven't had the adult life that so many of these people have to be forced into like these opinions that are ingrained within me. I come in as a clean slate. I can say like, oh, I never really thought about that, but that road. So I can really take every opinion from the start and develop my own opinion on it. So being my age helps with that, but I wouldn't say it really prohibits me or impedes me by people listening to me, anything like that. I've never had that experience, luckily.
That's great. Thanks, Ashley. I think we'll move on to Pat, but there's anybody who has questions to for Ashley, there will be more time at the end after each presenter has had some time to present and get direct questions. So there'll be plenty of time for all of that. But thank you so much, Ashley. Now, Pat Voermans, we're glad you're here. You're Lincoln County Board Supervisor and have had lots of experience in this area. Please let us know what your motivation is, what your running was like, what lessons learned, all of those kinds of things. Pat. Unmute, however.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I've been a Lincoln County Supervisor for 6 years, and I'm going to put in my papers to run for 2 more years. My area is very rural in Lincoln County at the north end of it. So I represent a very rural population. However, on the Lincoln County Board, many of the issues are, much broader than that. So this was never in my background, wasn't very political, and I certainly didn't think I'd be doing this. But my inspiration actually is the League of Women Voters, because when I retired up here, I joined them and joined the group and was so inspired by some of the things they were doing, and they encouraged people to get involved. So I really didn't know very much about local government. And so I ended up becoming a poll worker and helped with voter registration and gained a little more knowledge. Well, then it was kind of an accident. The person who had been representing the area chose not to run again. So some friends said, well, do it. And I thought, well, maybe I could learn something. If no one else wants to do it, I'll do it. Well, it didn't last long, because then pretty soon I ended up with an opponent. And then I was told I had to, I really had to campaign. I'm going like, well, if they want me in, they'll vote for me. And if they don't, and they said, my friends said, that is not good enough. You need to campaign. So I really did. But I went into the signs too. I have a familiar name here because I was born and raised on a farm in the area here. So that did help me, I'm sure. But even some people who knew me didn't realize that my name out there meant I was running, which I thought was really interesting. But anyway, so I thought that was hard for me to initially agree to campaign. So my friends, I actually attended a workshop put on by Wisconsin Progress with my neighboring supervisor in District 19, Julie Allen. That really helped me, because if you're going to run, you really need to have a message, and you got to get clear on it. Because when you're knocking on doors, you're gonna you have to be able to say to them very concisely and clearly what you're running for, and then be able to expand on it if you're asked questions. But you only got a couple minutes at a door. And so it makes you do some self-searching, get more articulate with and persuasive with what you're trying to impart. So that was extremely helpful. And I did the campaign. I knocked on a lot of doors. I went down to we have at our town hall recycle day every second and or recycle hours, 2 hours every 2 Saturdays a month. So I go down there in March and help people unload their car, saying, will you vote for me? And handing out my little cheat sheet. So it was I actually ended up enjoying it. because I met some real characters, got some interesting questions, and not too much vitriol, which surprised me. So I think that's extremely important if you're going to run for office, that you be clear on what you're running for, and be able to whittle that down into discrete messages. So I had a sheet that I'd hang on doors. I did do some of the signs as well, and had friends help me in some of the areas of my district that I wasn't familiar with. Some of my friends took me to some of those places. So it was an undertaking. And then when I got on the board, I actually didn't know very much about county board. So it's been a real learning process for me. And now on my 6th year, I feel like it's like peeling an onion or something more pleasant, but maybe not. It's like a layer at a time. You learn something, but then there's nuances and complications and so on associated with it. Ashley, you kind of touched on that too, with it's getting out there and figuring out when a problem is raised. You know, sometimes it seems so clear on the surface, and then you start looking into it, and it's a lot more complicated. So I too, like Ashley, at first did not want to speak up. I do speak up. I'm still not real comfortable always with it, but if there's an issue that I know what I'm talking about, I don't mind speaking up. And I think I've been able to contribute on the board. I think I've got the respect of other people. I also go to all my town board meetings, or most of them, and that's kind of a conduit. But I am surprised, and I think this is something I wish we could find an answer to. I'm surprised by the fact that so many people just kind of look at you, you know, they don't know what county work is per se. I mean, they might get mad about something and complain about that, but they don't really know what they do. So they don't know what to ask you. So when I go to town board meetings, I'd like to know what to tell people. I'd like to know what kind of a reporting format as a county board supervisor you could bring in a concise way to the town board or to people. You know, we represent districts that are so large, you can't get out there to, you know, I mean, there's like probably 4 different kinds of communities in the area that I cover. So there's no one watering hole, so to speak, or, you know, venue that people go to that you get to really try to educate or tell people what's going on. So it's episodic in terms of the issue. So I've learned a lot, I can say. I think running for office is good if you have a curious mind, you know, because you just can learn a ton of things. And I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm on a number of committees. I'm on the Board of Health, and as a retired nurse, that's pretty good spot for me. But I'm also on the jail, law enforcement, emergency medical services, and judicial committee, social services, North Central Healthcare, which Lincoln County is in cooperation with Marathon and Langlade. It's a tri-county agreement for mental health services and crisis services for our residents, which no one, like Lincoln and Langley, don't have enough people or funds to run a service like that. So we have this tri-county agreement. I'm on that, and our nursing home operations committee. And as I was talking before we got online here, we in our county don't have anybody addressing broadband issues, and it's huge. It's just a huge issue for us, because a large part of our rural areas are very inadequately covered for broadband. Some may have internet, but they don't really have broadband hardly anywhere in this rural area. Broadband being defined as 25 megabits down and 3 up. And, you know, people are on copper wire out here with, and it went 10, 11, 9, 3, you know. So I got involved, and I'm going to, I just got approval today to start a broadband committee here in Lincoln County, which is a little intimidating, but I'll learn some more. So I feel it's just been a really the only bad thing about it takes up a lot of my time. So the wonderful times I have going to league meetings have been kind of curtailed. I really spend a lot of time at this, and I don't know, really enjoy it. How much time? I see that on the chat. Well, because I'm on a number of committees, you know, I live at the north end of the county and Merrill is towards the south end of the county. So it's long drives. It takes me, I have to reserve an hour to get there and an hour to get back. Might be a little shorter, but I have to commit that time to it. And then the time of the meetings. But there's a lot of prep work. So the meeting itself is discussion and making decisions, but you've got prep work. You know, you've got your meeting minutes, your resolutions, things that are presented in a packet before you have the meeting and that you talk about, because you can't, we can't really cover issues. I mean, being a government service, these meetings and the agenda, and you can't just add things to it willy-nilly. It has to be open to the public. So you've got pretty much hours of reading. Some of my reading for North Central Healthcare meetings are a couple hundred pages. You know, it's like you spend a lot of time at that kind of thing and trying to understand the issues before you get into the discussions. So the county board meetings actually end up being pretty much most everything on there has, well, everything has gone through a committee of one of our committees to get endorsement of those members that are on that committee. So
we have another question here. That's great. We have another question that says, has the lack of broadband added to the abilities that the area to attract remote workers?
You know, that's a really interesting question. I don't know, but we did do a survey in Lincoln County. The UW Extension did it, a couple of years ago. And it showed that, I can't remember the percentages, but yes, there were a number of people that would have stayed. I'm in my immediate area is a cottage area with lots of small lakes and cottages and homes too. But there were people that stated they would stay here longer, they would like to work here. And that was before COVID really hit. And I've noticed, as Ashley has, more people are in this area than ever before. And I'm getting more questions about broadband. So yes, I think it affects it. My nephew has a son that 2 years ago used to have to come over here to do his schoolwork to my house because I had broadband and they didn't. So now people have internet, but it's really not broadband. And we're not just talking about getting internet to people. We need to be looking at the needs of the future for down the road. And this 25 isn't going to be even enough for down the road. So, you know, there's a lot to learn and a long way to go, I think. What are accomplishments? Let's see. What are a couple of accomplishments that I have? Well, I think we voted, you know, I've worked with others. One, our nursing home nursing homes have been in decline in terms of their population. Many have closed in the state. We have a county nursing home and feel an obligation. Our county nursing home takes more of our Medicaid people than private ones do. All nursing homes right now are running below capacity because below, you know, their targeted patient census because of the COVID. So we have two, but our nursing home was declining before COVID hit. And we ended up making a strategic decision to renovate and not increase numbers, but to have a rehab wing with private rooms and a memory unit. And those units were doing pretty good, but when COVID hit, of course, everything went down. But we also understood as a small facility, we needed to make some changes in administration, and we ended up working with North Central Healthcare, and they are doing the management of that nursing home. Even though we own the building. I felt that was successful, although they're in a bit of trouble, quite a bit of trouble right now financially, but that a lot of it has been impacted by the low census associated with COVID. So there's a lot of work being done in that area. It's hard for me to think of all the things that I've helped work on to get through. I guess I'm really mentally not quite thinking about that, but there's a number of things that have gone through with my input. It's a collaboration. It's not just a one-person show. I had a issue recently, law enforcement people just dropped a bomb on our finance committee that, the tower out in the Harrison Hills where I live isn't functioning, and it's not, we need $175,000 to replace it. My God, it's like, you need a plan for this stuff. What do you mean it's not functioning? Well, when they rented it, apparently nobody did a survey of it, because it was probably not functional then, yet we were renting it. Anyway, there were a lot of questions. So I'm looking at that, and I raised that at the board, asking to withhold funds being approved. We know they need the tower, but I raised the issue. I objected to those funds being released until they gave us a plan for maintenance and inspection, and no money until we got that. Well, that raised a real storm, but it also raised the fact that no one on our board knew what the status was of all these towers around here. Who manages them? Some are on county. How many do we have? Who manages them? How are they inspected? So it raised a really big issue that's taken on a life of its own and getting resolved. So that's another one, I guess I could say.
Yeah, that's huge. Someone asked also, and this kind of leads into it because I'm hearing it, what has been some of your biggest frustrations in your job?
Well, county is very formal in terms of Robert's Rules of Order. Sometimes you just want to get things done, and so you've got to listen. And so the positive side of that is you get a lot of input sometimes into things that you feel is the negative is it feels redundant. Sometimes it seems like it's obvious, but then when you start to listen to people, you get a broader picture. So patience, I probably don't always have the patience I should for some of the stuff. And especially, we all know sometimes some of the things that come up, especially some of these political issues, there's some people that want to raise political issues. And it's like, oh, come on, we got to get some work done here. Let's not mess around with this, but you can't say that. Yeah. So I guess that's it. I probably have others too, but can't think of it right now. Overall, I'm really satisfied with this experience, but there are some other frustrations that it's hard to talk about really, because they're embedded in issues, right? Down to where you're working in something. So.
Right. Well, thanks, Pat. We will have time to revisit this, but we want to make sure that everybody has their opportunity to give their presentation. And Chris ran a statewide campaign opposing Rob Swearingen, which must have been very interesting and challenging. I see here that you grew up in Milwaukee and went to the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. Chris, tell us about your adventure.
Morning. Well, afternoon now to everyone. Thanks for the intro, Pam. Appreciate that. Yeah, I did grow up in Milwaukee. And I also wanted to thank the League for the invitation as well. I have the utmost respect and appreciation for what the League does. And I also, when I was out campaigning in the 34th Assembly District, I came to have a real appreciation as well for our local representatives and local government, town boards, county supervisors, etc. You all really do some serious heavy lifting, and just so grateful for everything that you do. And my campaign was back in 2018. It seems like so long ago now. So much has happened, with the pandemic and just life in general. I'm retired now. My wife and I, we have our first grandchild. So, our life has changed quite a bit since 2018. Just a little background, the 34th Assembly District is Oneida, Vilas, and Forest and Florence counties. It's one of the largest assembly districts in the state, and one of the things I learned while I was campaigning was just how large the district is, and how beautiful it is as well, and how much natural beauty we have up here in the Northwoods. I've kind of been involved in public service for as long as I can remember. I mean, even as a kid, there were we do paper drives, for uniforms for our basketball teams. I've always been involved in some form of organizing, and it drew me into a profession in public education. I was a classroom teacher for 24 years. And during that career, I became involved in labor organizing, very much involved with union activities, and I got involved in leadership. I was for example, I was the president of our local teachers association. I served on the legislative committee for WEAC for a couple of years. I also served on the state superintendent's rural advisory council for schools and libraries and communities. So I kind of, it's kind of in my genes, I guess. I don't know if any of you remember Bill Proxmire, but I met him when I was a kid, at the state fair in West Dallas, and I went out and knocked doors for Jimmy Carter. I know the league isn't partisan, but when you run for state assembly, it's a very partisan undertaking, and I learned a lot in that respect as well. So motivation really was around public service. I always believed, or I learned and was taught that to whom much is given, much is expected in return. And that, I had been involved in political things as long as I can remember. I canvassed for candidates. I was involved in organizing. I would make phone calls for candidates. And then finally, I was presented with this opportunity to actually be a candidate myself. And it was a very difficult choice, believe it or not, because as Pat was saying, and Ashley as well, once you make that decision, your life changes. And all of a sudden, time is really a huge consideration. So I didn't just decide it. It was a family decision, and I had to talk with my wife, and we talked for quite some time, and how it would impact our family because of the time commitment and the energy that would be put into running a successful campaign. All of the campaign activities, fundraising to mount a campaign for a state assembly district is quite an undertaking, as you might imagine. So I never would have been able to do it without that kind of support from my wife. And once she said, I think you should do it, Chris, then we were all in. And we put together a wonderful team. I think that's key as well, especially for this kind of office. You need to have good people around you, not people who just tell you what you want to hear, and not necessarily just political people either, but just a really good, solid team. And I've met quite a few really good people over my time up here in the Northwoods, and I was able to reach out to many of them, and fortunately, many of them did agree to serve as part of. It's called a kitchen cabinet, but it's like your campaign organization, and got some wonderful guidance and input from them to help me while I was campaigning and working through issues, and as Pat also said, trying to you have to make decisions. It's nice to be politic, and it's nice to try and think that you might be able to please everyone, but you really can't. And you do have to make decisions, and you really need a lot of good input. And I'm so grateful for that. Also, to motivation, I might back up just a little bit. I did attend early on one of the league's events, a candidate event like this, and Pat was there, and Irv Teichmiller, County Supervisor in Vilas County, and then Bob Moss, I believe his last name was, who served on the Oneida County Board as well. So that was extremely helpful in my decision making. Some of the issues that motivated me, I know in my bio I said I'm now retired and grateful for that. And there are a lot of reasons, not the least of which is I am now eligible for Medicare. And I wish everyone was. So that was an issue that was very important, near and dear to me when I ran back in 2018, was expanding Medicaid coverage in our state. Also, the environment is a huge issue for me and for our family and for our communities as well. Ashley was talking about, tourism being such a driver of our economies up here in the Northwoods. And of course, key to that is having a pristine environment. That's why people come up here. For the most part, school funding as a classroom teacher, I wanted to, and I worked, on the State Superintendent Advisory Council on this particular issue, and we were able to get $17 million increase in the transportation funding, which hadn't been increased for like 30 years. So that, all of those kinds of issues, dark store loophole, tax loopholes, just tax fairness, we want to be fair to our people. It didn't seem fair to me that our residential taxpayers should be picking up the tab for these companies that come in from, who knows where, companies like Walmart, et cetera, Walgreens, and we have to pay their tax burden. Transportation policy, which has been mentioned, collective bargaining. As I said, I served as the president of our Teachers Association. I was, advocating for the repeal of Act 10. Again, it's a fairness issue. And then finally, fair maps. The redistricting that took place back in 2010 really skewed the playing field. And again, it was an issue of fairness for me. So
we had a question come in. Chris, we had a question come in about that, is how that you handled and kept your spirits up knowing you were in a severely gerrymandered district and area.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And really, the bottom line for me, you know, again, I guess it has to do with how I was raised. And I had some wonderful teachers growing up, you know, and family, parents, etc. And I was taught at an early age that it wasn't always, I mean, you didn't always get into something because you knew you were going to win. You got into it because it was the right thing to do, or you felt it and believed that it was the right thing to do. So, you know, that always was my perspective running for this office, was that it was just the right thing to do. I mean, in a democracy, there's the assumption that you have at least two parties. And so I just felt it was the right thing to do. Win, lose, or draw. You know, you just go out there and give it your best. So that's what I wanted to do. And I hope I did do that.
That's great. Is there something you would have done differently regarding the campaign or with changing demographics? And what about funding? How did you get funding?
Yeah, I'll deal with that, and I'll deal with it briefly. Funding, yeah, it does take up a considerable amount of your time as a candidate, especially a first-time candidate. Once you're an incumbent, you have, you know, a nice apparatus, let's say, to assist you. But when you're first going out there and getting the name recognition that Pat referenced earlier, you do spend a lot of time on that, unfortunately. Now, that's the one thing that I would change. If I had my druthers, candidates would spend little to no time. Campaigns, is particularly for state office, state assembly, state senate, governor, etc., would be publicly funded, and the media exposure by virtue of having a corporate charter in the state of Wisconsin. That's something that the people grant corporations. By virtue, and there is, contrary to whatever Milton Friedman and Frederick von Hayek want to say about the purpose of corporations, it is more than to provide a return on investment to shareholders. Corporations are there to serve the public interest, and as such, I would think that, you know, like the local television station, Channel 12, it's a corporation that, as part of their charter, they would provide time to candidates gratis. The same thing with the rest of the media, radio, print media up here. And what I would hope, instead of having to do this willy-nilly sign thing and knocking on doors with you know, what I would have hoped would have happened is that it would have gone back to like the Lincoln Douglas days, where you know, you're running against this candidate, right? Well, let's just debate. Let's debate. You know, let's have a debate every 2 weeks or every week, and have it on, you know, WXBR, have it on Channel 12, have it on whatever media outlet. But that should have been the focus from my perspective, is what are the issues that really matter to our communities up here in the Northwoods, and giving voice to those issues, and then letting, you know, people hear and be party to that conversation, and then let them make a decision, you know, based upon that interaction. So I hope that answers your question.
That's very helpful. We've got a bunch of questions that have come in, but most of them are directed towards everyone at this point. So unless there's one more thing that you'd like to say, Chris, I'm going to open up some responding to questions to Pat, Ashley, and yourself to answer these questions, because we have a great one about what do you see that should be in civics courses for K through 12 school, particularly about local politics.
Well, again, I just want to thank the league for holding these events, and thanks again for the invitation. So, and I'll just open that up to the floor, the civics question.
Okay, great.
I guess for K through 12, I wasn't really exposed to local government nearly as much, but my sister was. My sister's 4 years younger than me. She went to Lakeland as well, and she had an amazing teacher who encouraged involvement in local government, and she actually sat as a junior member on the Oneida County Board. She ended up going back to Chicago and discontinued her political career up here, but I would have loved to have that opportunity, and I think I would have gotten involved much sooner if that was the case for me. I didn't even know anything about political, like local governments, and that the power that they have and is needed for these areas. As someone of that age, never even came to my mind, and I wish I would have known earlier.
This is
Thank
Pat.
you. Hi, Pat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, I mean, I agree that people don't seem to know. I did not know much about, as I said before, about local government, and it's really hard to get people interested. Even at our forums that we've had that the league has put on, you don't get many people from the community that want to step into the fray and try to figure some of this out. So, you know, I think in school they should be doing a lot more on civics than, but I don't know currently what's being taught, but certainly as represented by the people I know that are out of school, they haven't had much on civics to understand what's going on. And it's a problem for us, I think.
This is Chris. Yeah, as a classroom teacher, I learned how extremely difficult it is to make any changes to statewide curricula. And, you know, this, I mean, as positive as it sounds, I don't want to sound like a negative Nelly. I mean, I think it's a great thing. And I do believe that, you know, if we want to have a functioning democracy, we need to know what that is, and we need to know how it works, and not just in theory, but you know, the processes, etc. It's just to get that now into a standards-based curriculum that really, you know, with high stakes testing, etc. Boy, that would be, you know, that'd be kind of hard to get that one across the goal line. You might need to go outside of, you know, the schools to do that. I'm not really sure how that would happen. I would back up just a little bit. You know, there's been quite a discussion here about broadband up in the Northwoods. Actually, where we are right now in terms of tech, you know, broadband really is, the tech has moved way beyond broadband. You know, we're talking about 5G, we're talking about decentralized networks, and, you know, we're talking about the metaverse, et cetera. And this is like way far ahead of where we're having our conversation right now. We're really far behind up here in the Northwoods in this respect. And I'll just give you a real quick example of this. I remember during the campaign that there was a lot of talk about heavy metal mining in the Northwoods. Oneida County voted it down overwhelmingly. And somehow, you know, our elected representatives did not get that message, and they kept hammering away at this heavy metal mining. And the only place really for heavy metal mining in the Northwoods is in museums, honestly. The only thing that we should be looking at mining right now is Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. That's where the economy is going. And that's where the discussion has to go as well in terms of the internet, because we're not really looking at Web 2.0 anymore. We're looking at Web 3.0. And the sooner we get on board with that, the better lives are going to be up here in our communities. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And that will impact as well how we govern ourselves too. It'll impact our politics and our electoral processes.
Absolutely. Now back down to and another question, just to make sure that I'm covering everything, is how do you use social media? Any of you use social media for name recognition or to discuss issues? Do you budget for this effort?
Well, I can just say that since COVID hit and we started with Zoom meetings for our, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Since the Zoom, or, you know, with COVID and we started with Zoom meetings, well, I'm not tech savvy, which is difficult, but I've learned to use that. And I find this to be very nice because, and I agree, we're way behind, but we have to start somewhere to get up to speed. And so I'm at infant steps with this. But in terms of my personal use, the fact that we went to Zoom meetings for county board, I think has been awesome. It doesn't replace in-person meetings, but it does allow for us to, from home, sit in and listen on other meetings that we can't always drive to. So one of our driving committees at our level, county level, is the Administrative and Legislative Committee. Almost everything has to go through there. So if I want to hear a discussion on something, I can at home Zoom into that meeting. So I think this has been great. It won't replace in-person meeting. We don't want it to, but it's certainly expanded our ability to get more knowledgeable about other county processes, considering that we're only on a set amount of committees and there's a whole bunch else out there.
Thank you. Are there any particular tips about going door to door in the middle of winter in the rural areas, especially when it gets dark?
I cannot tell you, it gave me a vote. Because one house is downhill and it was all ice, and I managed to crawl down there and put something on her door. When she saw me before the election, I said, "Oh, I put something on your door." She said, "Anybody who would do that gets my vote." But yeah, it is. But I'll tell you, in response to Chris, yes, probably at your level of campaigning, it's a real pain to go door to door. At my level for county board, it was probably good. Even though it was onerous, I could manage it. And then by doing the other things, you get to know the people. And that was kind of good because it gave me a feel for things. Because I had a real quick, funny story. One guy goes, "Well, are you liberal or conservative?" And I said, "Well, do you need to know?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm liberal." And he said, "We'll work that out of you." And he laughed. And you know what I mean? Just people ask some funny questions, but I think they appreciated the face-to-face contact. And I did enjoy it, actually.
Yeah.
But in terms of, you got to be careful. Put cleats on your shoes.
when I did some door-to-door, not really a lot, but I started off very small. Like I said, I didn't need a lot of signatures. But like someone mentioned in the chat that it's dark early, going door to door is a little hinky lately. You don't know exactly whose door you're knocking on. So what I did is I started with people that I knew. And then when I was at their homes, I said, do you have any friends nearby that would be willing to hear what I have to say and sign for me? And then each house I went to, I got like probably 3 more people like, hey, Judy next door, she'd love to talk to you. She knits, you could sit down and knit with her for an hour. So I actually met a lot of really cool people that way. And that way I was going in with one, the backup of their friends that already stood behind me. And 2, I felt a little bit more confident knocking on someone's door without like surprising them during dinner or at night in the winter with snow cleats.
Yeah. Actually, for me, that was one of the most enjoyable parts of the campaign, was going out and meeting people, and met thousands of people that I never would have met otherwise, and wonderful experiences all across the district up here, and really enjoyed those conversations. Some of them were difficult. Again, it's a partisan endeavor, but for the most part, people were just very welcoming and generous with their time. And I knocked on over 1,000 doors myself, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah. And
That's great.
One last thing, I'll just finish. Our election was in November, so we didn't have to worry about the, early November. So we were done before the snow fell.
So nice.
For the deep snow.
Right.
Another statement in question is, many of our local government boards are dominated by men. Why is it important to have diversity of thought and persons on our local government boards?
Well, I can start with that. When I first ran, there were 4 women on a board of 22, and both liberal and conservative. They represented both ends. But what I've noticed, and now we have 7 this time around, I noticed that they ask questions in different ways, and they focus sometimes on different things than it seems. I mean, I'm generalizing kind of, but it brings in a different perspective as these women are, generally speaking, wise mothers and so on, and they see some of these issues from a different perspective. Fortunately, we have a number of them are professional women, and several are, so they also bring a good experience to the board from that perspective. So I think they're very, I think they also bring a leveling influence to the board. Maybe this is wrong to say, but I think with some men, they get a little heated and testosterone driven kind of, forcefulness, and I think the women bring a little different perspective. I think we have a really good board. We get a lot done, and I'm really pleased to be a part of it. But I do think women bring a different perspective to it. And I haven't had many problems with men. They seem to be very respectful. I mean, our board, the men on our board have been very respectful of listening to women. I don't think they cut us off more or anything like that. I think they genuinely listen, even though some of our questions are really different.
Thanks, Pat. Another question, I want to make sure that I've represented all the questions that have come through on the chat. Will any of your government entities, our local ones, this is really directed at you, Pat and Ashley, receive direct access to any of these federal infrastructure funds?
Infrastructure fund, I don't see that in front of me. Which infrastructure funds are you referring to?
It's the federal infrastructure funding, the new
You
funding.
mean the ARPA funds?
Yeah.
Oh, those are, that's in process right now. Yes, we will, town boards will receive ARPA funds. The county will receive ARPA funds. There's a formula for how it's going to be distributed. I don't think that formula has been totally agreed upon yet, formalized, so we're waiting on that. There's several years in progress, so people are, these county boards and town boards are looking at what they want to put them to. Broadband is high on the list. Housing, I think, is another one. And of course, at the town level, everybody wants it for roads, but you know what I mean? It's, all those processes are starting to, will come to fruition with more discussion. And so they're just started, I would say, and plans are being made. And we have a number of years before we actually have, I shouldn't say number, but there's several years. I think it's like 2024 or something like that. So until the process or the formula is formalized, it's pretty hard to go ahead with definite things. You can go ahead with general plans for how you're going to use it. So yes, we're all getting some.
Yeah, just to really piggyback on that, we're basically just in the same planning stage too. Since the rules haven't exactly come out as of, I was just pulling some notes I have here. I think this last announcement was made October 22nd that I have in front of me. There might have been one since then, but at that point they still were kind of finaling out the details on what is eligible for these funds. So we have great ideas for it, and there are some grants in progress locally. They're not going to know for sure until we get more information.
I have a, Chris, would you consider running for office again?
As I noted in my bio, I am gratefully retired, and I sincerely mean that. I'm so grateful to be able to have my own time now, and so the answer is I'm happy. We're happy. Our family is happy right here, right now, and we want to keep doing what we're doing. So no, I would not, but thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
And then we have another question. Do you think Swearingen is beatable in the next round?
If that question is directed at me, as long as we have this tripartite board of directors consisting of the media, the political parties, and the non-governmental organizations, the landscape as it is right now, no, he is not, or any candidate that is put up by the Republicans will not be beatable. That whole calculus has to change for anything else to change. If nothing changes, nothing will change. That's my opinion. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying, you know.
Never say never. Well, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions for these wonderful local leaders? I mean, I think I've learned so much, and I love hearing from people who are actually doing the job, and doing the work. And hopefully, that the citizenry up here really appreciates all those hours and that dedication that you have. And it's wonderful to meet you, Ashley, and Pat and Chris. Thank you so much. The league up here is an active league, and we are always recruiting members and trying to get the vote out and registering people to vote. And we have a website and our website, and we want to make sure that people are informed of what the local issues are and that they know how to run if they have the desire to run. Is there any other questions that people have or would like to?
This is Pat. Yes, first of all, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I learned too. Good luck, Ashley, and boy, it's really nice to hear what you had to say, Christian. And I want to say to Petra, good luck. Let me know if I can help you.
Thank you, Pat. It's really, for me, it started with the league, sort of spearheading our local league in terms of having an observer corps, members attending government meetings on a regular basis, choosing a particular government body. And honestly, I became fascinated. I was one of the first. Yo is also one. I think Kay. We have only a few people. Oh, I think the four of us who are doing this right now are all on this call. Dorothy, Kay, Yo, and myself. But honestly, I started watching the Oneida County Administration Committee meeting and just became fascinated with the breadth and the complexity of everything that it takes to run a county and just the issues. And, we get information through media and biases are hard to avoid, et cetera, but to really listen and hear discussion amongst people who know what's going on and to appreciate what's involved. I got hooked and I just don't want to be a spectator anymore. I just feel like I'd like a seat at the table and I'm ready. So thank you, Pat. And I'm going to be contacting you soon anyway for some particular advice and information. And thank you all. I wish I could figure out a way to encourage, I'm not much of a salesperson, but to encourage more league members, because that's what I think it is a great seed for coming up with new candidates. It's wonderful to have a clue what's going on in local government. And I hope we can encourage more people to at least start that way, and the courage builds up then, and the interest in public service. So thank you.
Yes. Well, heartfelt thank you to all three of you. Thank you for taking time today and for sharing so much of your journey with us. We appreciate it and look forward to the next time and the next time. So I'll wrap it up and say farewell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.